What if the Queen's final act wasn't forgiveness, but erasure? That's the question that hangs in the air as this story begins. Not in front of cameras, not during a grand televised moment, but inside a quiet room where history shifted without applause, without outrage, and without the public knowing until it was already too late. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Picture this for a moment. A sealed document. Heavy paper. Old ink. Final words. Princess and standing upright, composed, unflinching. And somewhere in that room, Prince Harry realizing that the story he thought he was still part of had already reached its ending. Because here's the part no one wants to say out loud. Harry may have believed the door was still open. That no matter how bad things got, no matter how many interviews were given or bridges burned, blood would still mean something when it came to inheritance. That his children, at least, would be protected. That the Queen, in the end, would soften. But what if she didn't? What if the will wasn't an olive branch, but a line in the sand? Ask yourself this. Why would a monarch known for patience, restraint, and silence choose her final legal words to speak so loudly? And why would she choose Princess Anne, of all people, to be the one who read them aloud? This isn't just another royal disagreement. This is the moment everything became permanent. For years, the public narrative has been chaos. Interviews claiming pain, documentaries framing betrayal, books promising truth. And through all of it, there was always an assumption hanging in the background like a safety net: inheritance. The idea that no matter how fractured the family became, the institution would still provide. That the crown might be angry, but it would never truly cut off its own. And yet, timing is everything. The reading of this will didn't happen in a vacuum. It came after exits, after accusations, after public wounds that could never fully heal. It came at a time when Harry and Meghan's future plans, financial security, and long-term relevance may have quietly depended on something they no longer controlled. And that's why this story matters now. Because this wasn't about money alone. It was about legacy. About who is trusted to carry the weight of the monarchy forward. About who is seen as a risk and who is seen as a safeguard. Think about it. In a family built on symbolism, nothing is accidental. Not silence. Not distance, and certainly not a will. There's a detail most people overlook. Before a single clause was read, before a single name was mentioned, there was a shift in the room, a stillness, a look exchanged, something that told Harry, instantly, that whatever he believed was coming wasn't. And when Princess Anne finally began to read, the first words weren't what anyone expected. Because the Queen didn't start with love. She didn't start with gratitude. She started with authority. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Why was Princess Anne the one holding the paper? That question alone changes everything. Because if this were about comfort, someone else would have been chosen. If this were about healing, soft edges, or emotional cushioning, the task would have gone to a different pair of hands. But Princess Anne isn't known for sentimentality. She's known for duty, precision, and delivering hard truths without blinking. So the moment she stood, everyone in the room understood something instinctively. This was not going to be gentle. Princess Anne didn't clear her throat. She didn't pause for effect. She didn't look around to gauge reactions. She unfolded the document with the same calm efficiency she's shown her entire life, as if she were reading a routine briefing instead of the Queen's final instructions to the world she left behind. And that alone should tell you something, and has always been the quiet constant. No scandals. No theatrics. No need for approval. She has spent decades doing the unglamorous work that keeps the monarchy functioning while others chased attention. When the Queen trusted someone to execute her last wishes exactly as written, no reinterpretation, no emotional edits, it was always going to be Anne. Ask yourself this. Would a monarch, choosing mercy, select the family member least likely to soften the blow? Harry, by contrast, had built his expectations on emotion, on family bonds, on the idea that history would outweigh recent conflict, that private reassurances once given still carried weight, that no matter what was said publicly, something unspoken still connected him to the core. But Anne doesn't operate on assumptions. She operates on reality. As she began to read, the tone was unmistakable, legal, controlled, final. No warmth layered into the language. No personal messages woven between clauses. This wasn't a grandmother speaking to her grandson. This was a sovereign closing a chapter. And here's the detail most people miss. The will didn't open with assets. It opened with intent. The Queen's intent. Words that established authority before generosity. Responsibility before reward. Continuity before compassion. It was a reminder, subtle but unmistakable, that inheritance in the royal world is not about affection. It's about trust. Look at Anne's posture in that moment. Straight-backed. Eyes steady. Voice even. No hesitation. She wasn't enjoying this. But she wasn't avoiding it either. She understood exactly what she was doing, and why she had been chosen to do it. Harry, meanwhile, was no longer listening the way he thought he would, because something had already gone wrong. You know that feeling when a conversation starts, and you suddenly realize you misread the entire situation? When the tone tells you the outcome before the words do. That's where this moment turns. Because as Anne reached the first major clause, it became clear this wasn't going to be a discussion. There would be no room for interpretation. No space for appeal. And when she reached the sentence that defined who was in and who was out, the air in the room changed. Because the Queen hadn't started with money. She started with exclusion. And that single line set the stage for what came next. A declaration that would send shockwaves far beyond that room, and straight into the future Harry thought he still had. No inheritance for Harry or his children. Those words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed heavy, flat, undeniable. And for a split second, time inside that room seemed to stall. Because this wasn't a rumor. This wasn't a leak. This wasn't a headline spun by tabloids or critics. This was the Queen's voice, delivered through ink and law, making something brutally clear. Nothing was coming. Not later. Not quietly. Not through the children. Ask yourself this. How do you prepare for disappointment when you never believed it was possible in the first place? Prince Harry had spent years speaking as if separation didn't mean severance. As if walking away from the institution didn't mean forfeiting its protection. There was always an undertone in his public statements, a subtle confidence that certain things were untouchable. Birthright, bloodline, legacy. But this clause erased all of that in one stroke. The wording mattered. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't angry. It didn't accuse. It simply stated exclusion as fact. Clean, legal, absolute. And perhaps most devastating of all, it included the children. Pause there for a second, because that's the part that changes the entire story. This wasn't just about Harry. This wasn't a response to interviews or books or perceived betrayal. This was a future-facing decision. A deliberate choice to draw a boundary that would extend beyond the present conflict and into the next generation. Why would the Queen do that? Was it punishment? Or was it protection? Here's where the contradiction hits. The Queen was known for her love of family, for patience, for endurance, for absorbing pain quietly rather than inflicting it publicly. And yet, this clause did something unprecedented. It removed the safety net not just from a son, but from his descendants. That's not emotional. That's strategic. Think about it. Inheritance within the monarchy isn't simply wealth. It's leverage. It's influence. It's the ability to operate independently while still carrying royal weight. By cutting that off completely, the Queen wasn't just closing a door, she was removing the handle. Inside the room, there was no dramatic outburst. No raised voices. No immediate protest. The shock wasn't explosive. It was internal. The kind that drains color instead of raising volume. And Princess Anne didn't pause. She didn't look up. She didn't soften her tone when she reached that line. Because to hesitate would have suggested doubt, and there was none written into the document. This is the moment where belief collapses. Because Harry wasn't hearing rejection. He was hearing finality. And just when it seemed the worst had been said, and continued reading. Because the will wasn't finished. The next section didn't explain the exclusion. It rendered it irrelevant. Because everything that remained, every title, every asset, every ounce of authority, was already being directed elsewhere. And when the name was spoken, there was no confusion about what it meant. Prince William. And that's when the room truly went silent. Because what came next didn't just decide who received everything. It decided who would carry the monarchy forward, alone. Everything passed to William. Not shared. Not divided. Not delayed. Everything. That single decision reframed the entire will in an instant. Because this wasn't just about who was excluded anymore. It was about consolidation. Power. control, and the unmistakable message behind it. Ask yourself this. When an institution as old as the monarchy chooses one person over all others, what is it really saying? The Queen didn't distribute. She centralized. In that moment, the will stopped being a family document and became a strategic one. Every estate, every private holding, every reserve designed to protect the crown from instability was placed into one set of hands. And those hands belonged to William. Here's the part that doesn't get enough attention. William didn't react. No visible relief. No triumph. No satisfaction. Because he understood what this meant. Receiving everything isn't a reward. It's a burden. It's a declaration that the future of the monarchy would move forward without a safety valve. No backup branches. No alternative centers of influence. No competing narratives funded by royal wealth. One pillar. One voice. One path. And in that silence, the contrast between the brothers couldn't have been sharper. Harry, absorbing loss he never fully believed was possible. William, absorbing responsibility he never asked to be so absolute. This wasn't favoritism. It was containment. Think about the Queen's perspective in her final years. A monarchy challenged not by external enemies, but by internal fracture. Stories leaking. Loyalties questioned. The crown becoming content instead of institution. From that vantage point, division wasn't just emotional, it was dangerous. So she made a choice that history would argue over for decades. She removed ambiguity. By passing everything to William, she ensured there would be no parallel power center, no funded dissent, no royal resources supporting narratives outside the institution's control. The monarchy would speak with one voice, or not at all, and that voice would not be shared. Inside the room, this realization settled slowly, because once the assets were named, there was nothing left to debate. No secondary clauses offering compromise. No future trusts waiting to activate. The door hadn't just closed, it had been sealed. Harry wasn't being punished. He was being written out of the operational future. That distinction matters. Because punishment invites reconciliation. Finality does not. And here's the detail that makes this moment even more haunting. The will didn't contain explanations. No justifications. No emotional footnotes. The Queen didn't defend her choices. She didn't need to. Her silence did the work for her. As unfolded the document, and the room began to exhale, something unspoken lingered. Because beyond money, beyond titles, beyond inheritance, the will had delivered one final consequence. It decided who mattered going forward, and who no longer did. But what Harry didn't realize yet was this. The true impact of that decision wouldn't be felt in that room. It would be felt afterward, in the days that followed, in the plans that collapsed, in the futures that suddenly looked very different. Because the will didn't just end a chapter, it triggered something else entirely. And once that next stage began, there would be no way to undo it. So what actually happened that day wasn't just the reading of a will. It was the moment the story Harry believed he was still writing was taken out of his hands. Think back to the opening question. What if the Queen's final act wasn't forgiveness, but erasure? Now you can see why that question matters. Because nothing about this decision looks impulsive. Nothing about it feels emotional. It feels deliberate, measured, quietly ruthless in the way only long-term planning can be. Queen Elizabeth II didn't raise her voice in her final years. She didn't correct narratives publicly. She didn't counter interviews or books. She watched. She waited. And then she acted in the one place where no spin could survive. The law. That's the part people struggle with. We expect drama to be loud. We expect revenge to be obvious. But this wasn't revenge. This was closure. Ask yourself this. What hurts more, being punished publicly or being removed so completely that your reaction no longer matters? Harry didn't lose money that day. He lost leverage. He lost the ability to claim unfinished business. He lost the option to say, "This isn't over," because the will said it was. And William? Prince William walked away carrying more than wealth. He carried final responsibility. The Queen didn't give him everything because she loved him more. She gave him everything because she trusted him to protect the institution without hesitation, without fragmentation, and without distraction. That distinction changes the entire moral equation. This wasn't about choosing one son over another. It was about choosing survival over sentiment. And the most haunting part of all, the Queen never explained herself. No letters leaked. No private messages revealed. No posthumous clarification. Her final word wasn't spoken. It was enforced. Silence, backed by law. For Harry, the aftermath is where the real damage unfolds. Plans built on assumptions suddenly collapse. Future narratives lose credibility. The idea of unfinished royal business evaporates overnight. When the institution moves on without you, the spotlight doesn't follow, it fades. And that's the consequence no interview can undo. So here's the question that lingers, long after the room emptied and the document was folded away. Was this cruel, or was it necessary? Was the Queen protecting the monarchy from further fracture? Or did she draw a line so firm that it erased any chance of reconciliation forever? That's for history to debate. But one thing is undeniable. In the end, the Crown didn't argue. It didn't explain. It didn't chase anyone back. It chose continuity. And in doing so, it made one final, irreversible statement about who belongs to the future and who is left in the past. Now I want to hear from you. Was this justice, or was it too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to follow what this decision set in motion next, make sure you're subscribed. Because the will was only the beginning. What came after is where the real consequences emerged.